out at the White House. Peter, thank you very much. Let's dig into this. A lot of questions regarding how this is all going to work out. Will these tax breaks for small businesses result in more jobs in this country? Joining us now, Republican Congressman Brian Bilbray of California and the president and CEO of the National Small Business Association, Todd McCracken. Todd, I want to start with you and get first your initial reaction to what you heard from the president today.
Well, I guess I would say it's kind of a mixed reaction. On the one hand, small businesses need a lot more credit. We are in favor of extending the current programs through the SBA, but that's a small part of it. We've been advocating for months now about using some subsection of the TARP money to actually incentivize banks to get money in the hands of small companies. What the original TARP just didn't work in that regard. And so we like the idea conceptually. The problem is the same problem we've had for months with the administration, is they have talked about the idea, but there are no specifics here. We don't know when this will roll out or how.
The $20 to $40 billion range that could be coming from TARP to lend to small businesses, that's still not acceptable to you, you're saying?
No, I think it is acceptable to us, but they haven't outlined how it will be used. They haven't outlined how the program will work, so we can't judge whether it will be effective. Conceptually, we think it makes a lot of sense because in times of economic recovery, and we hope we're entering that stage right now, that's when small companies need access to credit and lending the most. Because as they get a new contract, they get a new job, their employees and their vendors aren't going to wait to get paid, but they're not going to get paid for the work for some weeks down the road. So lending has to fill in that gap, or else the growth won't happen. So it is crucial. But we need the specifics.
Congressman Bilbray, the president will have to come back to you, to the House, to the Senate to get approval for some of these ideas and these measures. Where do you stand as of today?
Well, it sure sounds the proposals the president's pushing out today is what a lot of us were talking about with the original stimulus package. So it sounds very much what we've been asking for a long time, and I wish the first stimulus package had more of these type of proposals. The biggest problem now is that we've reached a point where to this morning we're notified that we're on very thin ice economically out there. We're talking about the United States losing its AAA in 3 years. And I think every time we talk about a new spending program now we're going to be looking over our shoulder at this pending debt. That's a major issue. But what we've heard were a lot of the proposals that we hoped was in the first stimulus, and now it's coming now in the second stimulus. The biggest concern, though, is, again, this money was supposed to go into paying off the debt when it came back from the TARP, and I opposed the TARP originally. But now it's almost like anything and everywhere we can figure out how to spend money, Washington is looking a way to do it. And the president may have some great proposals here. The big question is what happens when Congress gets hold of it and all the backroom deals are done with special interest groups? What's going to come out of this? And the good intentions of the White House does not change the fact that the House and Senate has to pass something, and usually it's not a very pretty package they send out.
You know what, Dunstan? I mean, the president has said, though, that he is going to be using some of that TARP money potentially to pay down the deficit. So it seems he's trying to please both sides of the aisle.
I understand, and maybe the congressman can help me out here. I'm a little confused. If we want this money to be going to small businesses and they need it, where are we going to get the money? And if it's available through the TARP funds, why not the TARP funds?
All right, Congressman?
Well, mostly because the fact is that we've seen them before, is that the TARP funds were supposed to go back to pay off the debt that the TARP funds created. Obviously, I prefer that if we send this money anywhere, we send it into the small business community that creates the jobs. Granted, it's also all the other programs are going to be tagged onto this program to see exactly what the true cost and benefit is. And if we're just talking about specifically looking at the small business, I think you'll get some great support here. There's still, though, that nagging issue of the debt issue, and that is where a lot of us wish the original stimulus had a focus to small business rather than what we saw, which was a huge giveaway grab bag.
Let me go back to Todd for a second on small business. Todd, so let's go through some of these ideas that the president pushed through today, in particular the tax incentives, but also tax breaks, elimination of cap gains taxes for expansion for small businesses. I mean, from what you heard just today, what do you think your members will do if they are given these new provisions from the president?
Well, I think some of those important ones are the ones for investing in new equipment and new technology, extending those. Some of those are in the original package, but they need to be extended. That really helps them, again, with the cash flow, because what it means is they don't have to deduct those things over years. They can deduct them right now. They can expense them immediately. That helps with their cash flow, gets equipment online, enables them to grow and take advantage of opportunities.
All right.
So that's very useful. The
Todd,
jobs tax credit. Yes, sir.
Oh, Todd, I have a question. When your small business constituents are going to bankers now, I mean, what's the reason why banks aren't loaning the money to you now, or at least what are the reasons that they're telling your constituents that, no, we're not going to lend you money unless we're kind of mandated by the federal government to give you money?
Well, there are lots of reasons they give. I mean, some of our companies, they've gone through a tough time, so their credit scores are lower, so they look less attractive to banks than they used to. Even though, in many cases, I'd argue that's not a true reflection of their true creditworthiness, just that simple score. However, I would also submit that the regulators and the banks themselves have sort of overreacted. They've become, I think, too conservative, where they were too loose with their money a couple of years ago. Now there's been, I think, an overcorrection. And until we find that median line, there will probably still need to be some need for stimulation.
Todd, is this too little too late? Is that essentially what I'm hearing from you?
I think that a lot of the ideas that are being discussed on credit should have been implemented at least 6 months ago, if not longer. I still think there's an opportunity for it to be really helpful. And so we want to work with the administration to get these things online and make them as effective as possible. But we've been talking about these ideas for a long time now, and we still don't have the specifics.
Let me go back to Congressman Bilbray on something else that the president mentioned today, and that, of course, was money for infrastructure, more money spent on highways, bridges, roads. In particular, in your state, that could be very helpful. We're talking $50 billion. What is your first reaction to that?
First reaction is, again, we wish that the original TARP had more of this rather than a minuscule, because this at least gives you a capability of repaying it somewhere through transportation funds. There's some way of finding a source in the future that could reimburse the general fund for these kind of expenditures. So obviously this is a very big plus. The trouble is, again, the hassle we had with the TARP and with the stimulus is the attitude is, let's throw money at the problem, we'll sit down and do the structural changes later, and they never have come along. And so now we're just now talking about a lot of this stuff that we were saying even the Bush administration should have been doing. So I think this issue is, let's make sure that if we spend the money because of the debt problem, that it is targeted and smart, and don't think that just because we can write a whole lot of blank checks that somehow that's doing a service to the economy or to the taxpayers.
You know, Dustin, I can't help but wonder, though, I mean, 70% of the original $787 billion has not been spent, has not been put out into the system. Is there an argument here that we should maybe wait to see if that money can work?
No, I waited nothing. I mean, we've been talking about it 6 months ago that these folks were saying this money needs to get out to us, and there's a debate about whether we should use this money or that money. If it's too little too late, they need to get the money there now and get those credit markets flowing. It's a shame this didn't happen months ago.
And at least with infrastructure, regardless, the United States needs its infrastructure improved, whether it's roads, bridges, the electrical system, the sewers around the country. All of that needs work. So essentially, any money that goes towards immediate improvements to that is going to benefit the entire populace. You
know, Todd, I'm curious, again, going back to the members of the Small Business Association, I mean, do you think that they will indeed hire based on these new incentives? I mean, is there a need or a want in this group, your group, to hire new employees to expand?
I think there is, but I would back up and say that what they really need to hire is some confidence in the economy and the ability. I don't know if this is going to prompt them to hire so much as enable them to do the hiring they would have done anyway. It sort of knocks down the barriers that would have kept them from hiring, I think, is a better way to look at it, which primarily, again, is going to be a cash flow liquidity, getting the money they need to take advantage of business opportunities. That's the single biggest thing we see right now.
Todd McCracken, the CEO and the president of the Small Business Association, thank you for speaking to us. An important day for you and your members. And, of course, Congressman Bilbray, we know you have a vote on the floor. Thank you very much, sir, for joining Fox Business.
Thank you very much.